Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're diving into a genuinely practical, grounded toolkit for managing those moments of intense, almost unbearable emotional distress. You know the feeling, right? It's like your emotions are driving the car and your logic, well, logic is just locked in the trunk. If you've ever felt that way, you are absolutely in the right place. We're pulling directly from dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, to give you a real tactical strategy for when the pressure completely spikes. So let's just jump right in. Think back for a second. Have you ever made a decision purely on emotion and just deeply, deeply regretted it later? Yeah, me too. I mean, we've all been there. We've all experienced that moment of absolute overwhelm. It's incredibly human. But you know, the true test of effective leadership, and I mean whether you're leading a team at work, managing your family, or just leading your own life, is finding a structured way back to clarity. You literally need a way to hit the pause button before you act on that intense impulse. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to explore a framework to help you regain control under stress. We'll start with the emotional mind trap, then look at bridging over to the wise mind. After that, we'll break down the accepts skills, distracting with activities and contributing, shifting perspective and emotions, pushing away and re-engaging thoughts, and finally, returning to effective action.
All right, part one, the emotional mind trap.
So what exactly is the emotional mind? Well, it's that state where your emotions are, quite literally, running the whole show. When you're hijacked by the emotional mind, you might act impulsively or make big decisions based on exactly how you feel in that split second. And the facts, the logical facts, are just completely ignored. The issue here is that your immediate reactions in this state usually don't align with your core values or your long-term goals at all.
Now, I want to be clear, emotions are a fundamentally beautiful part of being human, but blind reliance on them, that leads to unwanted consequences. Relying solely on these intense feelings can completely blind us, causing us to act in ways we'll probably want to take back the next day. And that is exactly why we need a structured path out of the chaos. We can't just cross our fingers and hope the emotional storm passes without doing any damage.
Which brings us to section 2, bridging to the wise mind.
I want you to think of your mental landscape kind of like a Venn diagram. You've got the emotional mind on one side and the rational mind, pure cold logic and facts, on the other. The ultimate goal? Reaching that sweet spot intersection right in the middle, your wise mind. This is a balanced state of inner wisdom. It synthesizes your logical thinking skills with your emotional awareness. Honestly, it's often described as that deep, instinctive gut feeling of just knowing what the right thing to do is.
But crossing from that impulsive, highly reactive emotional mind over to the balanced wise mind, yeah, that is not a simple step. It requires a bridge, especially when your distress levels are just off the charts. Think about it. When you're absolutely furious or completely panicked, you can't just magically tell yourself, hey, be wise now. It doesn't work. You need a tactical intervention to cool the system down first.
And that bridge is found in what we call distress tolerance skills. There's this highly tactical toolkit designed specifically for this exact moment, known as the ACCEPTS acronym. It's essentially a set of cognitive distraction techniques. The whole goal here, the entire point, is to temporarily direct your attention away from your emotional pain, just until you're calm enough to approach the problem with that wise mind we just talked about.
Let's get into the specifics. Section 3, distract with activities and contributing.
The A in ACCEPTS stands for activities. When distress hits hard, engaging your mind in a neutral or even positive activity can be a total game changer. I'm talking about doing something that requires your active attention, putting together a puzzle, cleaning out a closet, or playing a game. Activities dial down the distress by forcing your brain to focus on a tangible, demanding task, rather than just letting you drown in the emotional pain.
Next up, the first C, which stands for contributing. This means doing something kind or helpful for someone else. And the psychology here is actually fascinating. When you're stuck in the emotional mind, you are hyper-focused on your own internal distress, right? It's all about you. But contributing shifts your focus outward. By serving someone else, focusing on what they need, you effectively pull yourself right out of your own distressing thought loops.
Moving on to section 4, shift perspective and emotions.
Our second C is for comparisons. This involves comparing your current situation to a time in the past when you were, well, doing worse. Or it could be thinking about others out there who might be facing even greater hardships. Now, to be clear, this isn't about minimizing your pain. Your pain is valid, but it grounds you immediately. It gives you this sudden burst of necessary perspective when a problem feels totally insurmountable. Then we have E for emotions, specifically generating different emotions. Here's how it works. You identify the highly distressing emotion you're currently feeling, and then you intentionally do something to trigger the exact opposite emotion. So if you're feeling overwhelmingly anxious or deeply sad, you might go watch a really funny comedy. I know, it sounds almost too simple, right? But by forcing yourself to experience contrasting emotional stimuli, you literally force a shift in your internal state. You disrupt the distress.
Now hold on, there's a very vital distinction we need to make right here. This whole accepts thing, it is strategic distraction. It is not avoidance coping. Avoidance coping is a flight response. It's when you disengage, deny the problem even exists, or endlessly procrastinate. Accepts is totally different. We aren't denying the problem, actually, scratch that, we know the problem is there. We are simply creating the necessary cognitive bandwidth so we can actually solve it later using our wise mind.
Let's hit Section 5, push away and re-engage thoughts.
P is for pushing away. This is the act of temporarily compartmentalizing the painful situation. You might literally visualize putting the problem into a physical box and sticking it on a high shelf. Or you might write the problem down on a piece of paper and physically shove it into a drawer somewhere. It's a deliberate, conscious decision to say, I will re-engage with this issue, but only when I am calm.
Finally, we have T and S, which stand for thoughts and sensations. For thoughts, you distract your brain with a cognitively demanding task. Count backwards from 100 by sevens, or recite a song's lyrics. You give your brain a task so heavy that it literally lacks the bandwidth to ruminate. And for sensations, you use intense but safe physical stimuli. Hold an ice cube tightly, eat a painfully sour candy, or jump into a highly contrasting hot or cold shower. It is a total shock to the system. And sure, taking a cold shower when you're fuming mad isn't exactly fun, but flooding your nervous system with these intense sensations leaves zero room for the emotional pain to dominate the moment.
All right, bringing it home. Section 6, returning to effective action. So let's say you've used these ACC-EPT skills to break the circuit of distress. Awesome. But how do you actually know when it's safe to unpack that problem from the mental box and re-engage? Well, DBT uses a super helpful tool for this called Subjective Units of Distress, or the SUD scale. Think of it as an emotional thermometer. It objectively measures the intensity of your emotional pain on a scale from 0 to 100. 0 is totally chill, no distress, and 100 is the highest level of distress imaginable. We use this to check our temperature before and after applying an ACC-EPT skill.
Here's how that looks in practice. If you take your temperature and you're in the 80 to 100 range, you are absolutely in the emotional mind. Do not pass go. You must deploy an accept skill to temporarily distract yourself. Because the whole goal of this circuit breaker is to bring those subjective units of distress down to a manageable level. We're aiming for that 0 to 40 range. Once you're down there, your logic can come back online and you can safely re-engage with whatever the issue is.
And that, my friends, is how you bridge the gap. You recognize the high distress, you deploy a cognitive distraction technique, you measure your emotional temperature, and you return to center. Because once you've successfully stepped out of that reactive emotional mind, you can finally approach the conflict or the decision from a place of true, grounded, wise mind authority.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. Look, we all face overwhelming moments. That's life. But reacting blindly, that's a choice. So, which specific circuit breaker from the Accept Toolkit are you going to choose the next time the pressure rises? Pick one today, just one. Keep it in your back pocket and just see how much power you take back. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I will see you in the next explainer.